34 says, "Let your women keep silence in the churches, for it is not permitted unto them to speak, but they are commanded to be under obedience, as also saith the law." The first part of this verse we've already covered in the last session, and so I'm not going to get into that too far. Just want to point out a couple of things that really need to be, is that the word for under is the Greek word hupo, and hupo can mean beneath the surface or way over on the other end of the spectrum of meanings for hupo, is inferior to others. Now, in these two verses, it seems like the translators way back in the 1600s, and even before that when they started translating into English, chose to use the most severe and harsh terms when it came to any subject having to do with women in the scriptures. And so they all leaned, or many of them leaned toward hupo, meaning inferior to others. And then that would put that in this, is that they are to be under obedience, means they are inferior to others and need to stay under and obey their superiors. And however, let's take a look at a couple of things here. In Acts 1:14 and 15, we find that both men and women were together in the upper room praying, and they were in one accord. And it made no difference as far as their participation and their relationship to the Lord. There was no superior or inferior. Galatians 3:26-28, Paul says, "You are all children of God, neither male nor female. You are all one in Christ." They say there's equality in those that can't be denied. No inferior or superior. There are various ways that these are explained away. And I just want to point out that in this verse, in this sentence, under means beneath the surface. It does not mean inferior to others. It simply means something that is beneath the surface. Someone who is behind the scenes, such as a stage manager would be in a theater. Someone you can't do without. The whole thing would collapse without them, and yet they're not up front with the spotlights on them all the time. They're a strong supporter who is very important, but is not as visible as others. An administrative manager. And because I'll wait until I get to hupotasso here, because that's the next part of this, is that it says they are commanded to be under obedience. The word obedience is simply a mistranslation of the word hupotasso. Now, they got under right, is that hupo means under, but the second part of the word for obedience is that is the word tasso. And tasso does not mean under obedience. Tasso does not mean obedience like the King James Version says that it does. Hupo tasso, the word tasso, it's a compound word, hupo tasso. Tasso simply means, according to the Greek English dictionaries, to organize or arrange special details in an orderly manner. Okay? That's what tasso means. It has nothing to do with obeying a superior, okay, or being inferior to others. It simply means the organization that someone does that's beneath the surface. It's beneath the surface. And that's what hupotasso is. It also means to take a strong position in support of. This is another one of the Greek English dictionaries that says it. Tasso means to take a strong position in support of. And when I think of strong position in support of, I think of, hopefully you can see this here, is that you get a treat of my wonderful artwork again, is that in a building, we all notice or believe that the building is that which is visible. Okay? But if anybody knows anything about building at all, realizes that that building would not be able to stand if it wasn't for this thing called something taking a strong support beneath. And that's what these foundations are. These are what Paul is talking about when he talks about hupotasso. He's talking about a strong, stable support underneath or below the visible line. In theory, we all know that that's very important. We've all seen what happens to buildings that don't give a lot of care and a lot of attention at the beginning of building to these strong supports beneath the surface. And yet it is our nature to only believe in what is visible. It's this thing that Paul criticizes some in the churches, that who are concerned and taken up with appearances, and yet some of the most important people in the body of Christ are those that are not seen. And that is what Paul is talking about when he says that these women need to be under obedience. It's calling on wives, because we've already talked about that women in these verses means wives, because they have husbands. We'll find out in the next verse. So wives are not commanded, because Paul never said commanded. He never said that they are commanded to do anything. But he's saying that underneath in obedience is hupo, meaning beneath the surface, tasso, to organize and arrange. I call hupotasso the under-organizer. Okay? Husbands, many of you can testify that their wives are the under-organizers of their whole family life. Like I was just saying just the other night, not only when my wife died did I lose my wife, but I lost my memory, I lost my manager, I lost my calendar, I lost my my stage manager, my administrator, my money manager. I lost all those things because I didn't know it as much that, you don't know what you got till it's gone. I didn't realize that she was doing all. She was this strong support underneath me, who was probably a lot more visible. If you knew anything about my marriage, I was a lot more visible, a lot more out there, a lot more possibly verbal and things like that along the way, but she was the hupotasso. She was the hupotasso of the marriage, and I think that is a godly and it is a sign of a spiritual woman to be a hupotasso. God is pleased with hupotasso. Is a wife that's organizing and arranging the details of her marriage and her family, by the way, relationships in an administrative managerial role, in strong support of her husband's role. Okay, now the thing is that here's the place that God's desire is that she would be a strong support for her husband, who takes the spiritual leadership of the family. Okay, and women would love to. Most women would really get underneath their man if he started to take spiritual initiative in their family. She would support, she would pull out all the resources that she has, and she has many, and apply them to making it go well for the guy who even tries to lead his family toward Christ. So that's what he's talking about there. He's not talking about grinding women down into silence. Now, the next part of this verse is interesting. It says, as also saith the law. Whoa, you talk about pulling out the heavy guns. So if nothing else will convince you to shut up, women, it's the law. It's the law, you know. And there are, let's see, here's a news flash for all of us, is that there is no law in the Old Testament. You can search the world over trying to find a law that says that it prohibits women from speaking, and you will not find it anywhere in the law. You know, liberally talking, we're talking about the whole Old Testament, okay? You can't find it anywhere. So those that say, well, we gotta find something in the Old Testament that proves that women are inferior and they need to be quiet and do what they're told. And so there is a couple of scriptures that are offered. I call them unconvincing explanations for this statement that Paul makes, that it's in the law that women are to be under obedience, even though we just found out that it's in the law. Guess what we should be looking for? It is in the law that women should be a strong support underneath their man. That's what hupotasso means. It's like be the foundation. It's crucial. It's got to be there. And these two scriptures, Genesis 3:16, it has the phrase, and he shall rule over you. And that is the text that is sometimes referred to, that makes it say in the law that she should be quiet and obey. The thing about that verse, that he shall rule over you, that phenomena, that terrible relationship that Adam and Eve got into, was after sin entered them. So when God declares, he shall rule over you, what he was doing is saying, this is the consequence of your sin. Now, is that something we should be referring to and say, yeah, this is what women, yeah, this is women in the church. They should be living with the consequences of Eve's sin. Every one of you need to be punished for Eve's sin. That's an unconvincing explanation, in my opinion. The other one is in Genesis 2:20 through 24, where simply the account that Adam was formed first and then Eve. Okay, so here we have the infantile logic that says, I was here first, therefore I'm the boss. I was here first. You got to do what I say. And neither one of those reflect the character of our God. They reflect the character of the other guy. And they reflect the character of a man in sin. But there is a passage in the law that talks about women being hupotasso. In other words, being that arranger and organizer of the details of her relationship with her husband, administrative managerial role. Guess where that's found? It's also in Genesis. It's chapter 2:18. It says, Eve was created by God. Now get this. Eve was specifically created by God to be a help meet to her husband. Okay? Help meet is the word aver. And I don't know Hebrew, but I can look it up. It means one who rescues, surrounds, and protects. So Eve was specifically created and formed out of a rib of Adam in order to rescue this bumbling idiot, this accident-prone nut, to rescue him, surround him from all the consequences of his choices, and protect him from the enemy of all kinds along the way. How is Adam going to make it without her? It's not gonna. It was not good that he was alone, because guess what? He wasn't getting rescued. He wasn't surrounded. He wasn't shielded, and there was no protection for this guy. He was out there on his own, and it was not good. The law says that a woman is to rescue and surround and protect her husband, the same as hupotasso is a strong support and an organizer in support of her husband. Okay? Well, I was looking at this, Deuteronomy 33:27 came to mind. It's where Moses is telling the people about God. He says, the eternal God is your refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. So who is the ultimate hupotasso? The guy who's got his arms underneath all of us, in his strongly supporting, rescuing, protecting, and making it go well with us all the time. It's God. But Eve does the same thing that God does. She is underneath with the loving and honoring arms. Okay? So I thought that was an interesting thing there. Is that the law does say, and I think this is the passage that Paul was talking about when he says all hupotasso, the wives should be hupotasso, as saith the law, and this is the place where the law says it, right here. All right. During the times, now, this is an application of this whole thing here. During the time that the others are judging a man's it should say prophecy. Okay. A wife can rescue, surround, and protect her husband by simply keeping silence about the inconsistencies between what he prophesied and what he lives. Okay? Keeping silent is an act of love. Okay? James 5:20 and 1 Peter 4:18 both say love covers a multitude of sins. Love does not expose sins. And we think that prophecy is supposed to expose sin. Okay? Well, but love covers a multitude of sins, and covers means keeps silent about unfavorable things which might be harmful to others. Covers all things quietly. Covers means to preserve by covering with a cloak of love. All right, so all of this applies to, and I'm not going to go back over it again, but just to remind you that these instructions are additional instructions about let the others prophesy back in verse 29. And so what is saying here is that when the others are prophesying, you wives, just keep silent. Sorry? While the others are judging, you wives don't participate in that. We'll talk more about that in a minute here. But I want to get to this question here is that, so there's these prohibitions against wives speaking when their husbands' prophecies are being judged. Why isn't there any restrictions on a husband from judging his wife's prophecies when her prophecies are being judged? There's ample support in the scriptures that women prophesy in the public church assembly. Okay? There's other places that simply say that flat out. So when a woman prophesies and the others are going to judge it, why has Paul neglected to put any restrictions on a husband from judging his wife's prophecy? Can the husband knows just as many inconsistencies between what the wife has prophesied in her life. He knows foibles and weaknesses and all kinds of things. Why does he get a chance to say something about her prophecies? Well, it doesn't say so specifically in this spot about husbands needing to be silent while others are judging his wife's prophecies. You have to go to other places to find where Paul applies it to men. And here's some places that Paul applies this hupotasso, this being a strong yet silent supporter of one another. Ephesians 5:21, submitting yourselves one to another. One to another means it's what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So if wives need to remain silent during the judging of husbands' prophecies, then it means here that the husbands they also need to be showing their support for their wives by not participating in that. 1 Peter 2:3, let each esteem the other better than themselves. Each other is not a one-way street. It's a two-way street, just like Ephesians 5 is a two-way street. If it applies to the wife, it also applies to the husband. 1 Peter 5:15, all of you, That's husbands and wives and everybody for that matter. Be a strong support underneath one another. Be clothed with humility. These are verses that apply to men as well as women in the area of the best way to support your spouse when prophecies are being judged. Is to remain calmly silent. A husband is under the same obligations to be under obedience and keep silent when his wife's prophecies are being judged by others. There's no limitations put on women or wives that prohibits them from judging other people's prophecies. Only one person's prophecies she is limited from, and that's not so that the truth can be suppressed. That is so that love and honor can be demonstrated. All right. We'll come back a little bit later to some of those things and maybe fill in some details about that. Okay. Verse 35, and if they will learn anything, let them ask their husbands at home, for it is a shame for women to speak in the church. All right. Now, just because a woman is prohibited from judging her husband's prophecies in the public assembly does not mean that she won't have an opportunity to judge his prophecies. Okay, there is a special time and place reserved for a wife to judge what her husband has prophesied in the public meeting. She will get her chance, but not in the public meeting, not in public. And that is to fulfill the requirement that Paul started this whole section on. It says, let everything be done unto edification. That's the guiding principle over this whole section here. And what he's saying here is for wives to judge their husbands' prophecies and for husbands to judge their wives' properties is not edifying. It will not edify the church. In fact, it will cause disturbance. First words there unpack a little bit. And if. The word if there means in case or supposing that. In case she wants to, she has every right to learn and ask her husband about his prophecies. But that doesn't mean that she must say anything if she doesn't want to. Okay? Sarah, the wife of Abraham, was a perfect example of a wife who didn't say anything to her husband about his cowardly, lying behavior. Two places we find episodes where he was disgusting and threw her under the bus real bad, and she was in danger. And guess what? The silent treatment that she gave, being calmly and silent in that, was enough to drive Abraham to God in repentance. So the third time, there was a third episode, actually Abraham came through the third time. You can read all about that in Genesis. It's a good read. If they will, that means if they are determined to learn anything. The word for will there has the idea of determination and purpose. It's not a whim or kind of on the spur of the moment idea. This is something she's determined. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I want to find out for myself. Okay? That's what learn is all about right there. Here's the two that I think are interesting. Compare the similarities between judge, which you'll find in verse 29, and learn, which you find in verse 35. Judge, here's the definition of judge, to learn by discriminating. So judging actually means to learn, and by discriminating, big word for thoroughly separating and carefully evaluating. So that's what judge means. Now look at the word learn. Again, it means to learn not by discriminating or thoroughly separating, but to learn from inquiry. We're going to find out in a little while that the word inquiry is a very light term for what actually the word ask means, according to Paul. The word that Paul uses for let them ask, ooh, my goodness sakes. I don't know if any man could stand to be asked the way Paul says she is free to ask when we get to the word ask along the way. But to learn by inquiry, to examine closely and find out for oneself. Wives are very good at, I'm going to find out for myself. I'm not taking anybody's word for it. Okay, which is exactly the opposite of what interpreters have made this mean, where you don't ever think for yourself. I will tell you what to think. Yeah. So learn means to find out for yourself. If they will learn anything, okay, they judging and learning have the same goal. Okay. And the goal that judging and learning have is to understand the true intent of a prophecy. What God said, that's what we're trying to learn, and that's what the wife is trying to learn, and that's what the others are trying to judge, is what did God say? And then the second thing that is involved with both learning and judging is, why did he say it? Those that judge prophecies in the meeting are after, what did God really say and why did he say it? Why? What's he trying to tell us about here? Why? And that's exactly the same thing that the wives are doing when they learn for themselves from their husbands later on at home. Both 29 and 35 explained who, when, and where prophecies are to be evaluated. Paul gives a lot of information. I've been complaining and saying Paul leaves a lot of unanswered questions, but he gives a lot of information as well. And in these two verses, he tells who prophesies, when they prophesy, and where prophecies are to be evaluated. All those things, he answers those questions along the way. This word anything is really, there's been a heyday if they will learn anything. Now, if they will learn oh, I tell you, some of these commentators and some of these teachers, boy, they, again, this is whenever it comes to the subject of women, they'll put things in the worst possible light. They'll just make it just the most negative and humiliating thing they can. And they say if they will learn anything, really means that they don't know anything about anything. They are so backward and ignorant that they don't know anything. They're ignorant of everything. And that is what's being written and published around the world, is that women don't know anything. And there's a lot of men that go, always knew that. Ooh, yeah. But the word anything there is not anything. It's a certain thing. If she will learn a certain thing. This isn't just tell me anything. I don't know anything. So, and that's the thing. I don't know what that saying is, but tell me anything, I'll believe it. A woman is determined to learn a certain thing about the prophecy that her husband spoke in the public meeting. That's what it means if they will learn anything, is there's something about his prophecy that the wife is going, while the meeting is going on, while the prophecy is being done, she is quietly judging within her own self, just like everybody else in the meeting is supposed to, only she stays quiet in the whole meeting. But she's going, I'm determined to find out what he meant about that. I am determined to point out the double standard that he's presenting here. See, or whatever inconsistency might be in there. Or there's certain things that she wants to learn about, and it's an intelligent searching out that she has a right to find out for herself what he meant. Okay. So if they will learn anything, is there's certain things that she knows. And I'm telling you what, these wives of ours are sharp. They don't have to confront you, but they could, because they're sharp. Whoops, I'm going to stay with this one here. If they will learn anything, let them ask. Now, this is the thing, is that let them ask is a very weak rendition or translation of the word that Paul has here, where it's the Greek word, which you don't need to remember, is eparateo. It means to interrogate a person, to demand of them. It means to investigate and counter-question them. It means an intensive character of asking. Those are three Greek-English dictionary definitions of this strong word. It isn't like, well, I just thought I'd ask you something, honey. We got to talk, because I'm going to interrogate you on something here. Steve tells me a story of a guy who prophesied, and everybody thought his prophecy was wonderful. His wife remained calmly silent through the whole meeting while everybody patted him on the back and praised his prophecy and everything. They got home, and she says to him, he didn't ask, how did I do, honey? He knew better than to do that. All of us have learned not to do that. Okay, she just came right out. She just rounded on him and says, you're a false prophet. What What are you talking about? It was wonderful. Everybody confirmed it. It was a great thing. We were just all rejoicing. You prophesied, you prophesied judgment and destruction upon future generations. You were prophesying judgment and destruction upon our children, and there was no tears in your eyes. How you like that for a counter question, an interrogation? It broke his heart. In this case, he repented. He repented. His wife's judgment of the prophecy was worth far more than all the rest of the congregation's judgment of his prophecy. That's the power of a wife who keeps silent until her proper time and place. And then she has freedom to let loose. Now, she may say, as she's doing the dishes, she may say, you know what you said? It was good. It was good. Wow, boy, you save a guy's life that way too. See, so life and death is in the power of her tongue. Okay? I tell you, Proverbs says her husband safely trusts in her, and she will do him good and not evil all the days of his life. Okay, why could he safely trust in her? Because he knew she wasn't going to throw him under the bus in public. She was going to wait until they were at home. And husbands, you don't realize what kind of evil your wife could do by a few well-placed comments about the things that she knows about you. But guess what? The godly woman will do him good instead of evil all the days of his life. Wow, that's what I call love in action. And all she did is remain silent until her proper time and place. Okay, so Paul did this once to the Galatians. He said in Galatians 3:2, he said, "This only would I learn of you." And the tone of that letter is really confrontive in a lot of ways. And basically what he was saying is, he says, I'm not looking for information from you. I'm sticking this inconsistency and hypocrisy in your face, and I want you to account for it. When judging prophecy, wives are silent in public as an act of love and respect. But in private, they are free to interrogate, demand explanations. And if they would learn anything, let them ask their own husbands. Did you ever consider that her husband is the expert on anything a wife wants to learn about a prophecy that he has spoken? There is nobody in the world that knows more about the prophecy that he has spoken than he does. Who would you ask to get a better read on what that prophecy was all about than he himself? No one knows what he meant more than he himself does. No one knows more about how the Spirit was urging and moving and giving mental pictures or inspired words or whatever. She must ask him, not her friends, not her favorite chat on the phone buddy, okay? Not the pastor or the elders, not the small group fellowship. She does not discuss his prophecies with anybody except her own husband. It's the only one. Now, if she wants to know what somebody else meant by the prophecy that they gave, would she go to her husband and say, "What did he mean?" Well, that's what it implies in the scriptures, but he's not the expert on somebody else's prophecy. His guess is as good as anybody else's. If she really wants to know what somebody else's prophecy was, she should go ask them. Not the fellowship, not her friends, etc. Go ask the prophet. They're the expert on it. Oh, okay. Go ask their own husbands. Oh my. I lost something here. Okay. Go and ask their own husbands, and you know what? Oh, at home. There it is. I don't know. Skipped a cog there. I left out at home. Okay. Go ask at home. Okay, here's the progression of the word home. Oikos is the word that is used. And oikos literally means house or a building. But it morphed into very quickly from house to home. Oikos became synonymous with home. It's the building that your home is in, that you are at home in. And then it moved from oikos meaning your home to it meaning your family. Okay, so oikos moved very quickly in Greek and can mean all three of those things: house, home, and family. Titus 2:15 says that wives are to be keepers at home. And we all have the idea, and you know, who knows where you picked up all this, is that the idea that she never leaves the house. She's actually chained to the fireplace. And she never leaves the house. Keepers at home. The word is oikoauros. Oikoauros. What that means is that keepers is auros. And guess what auros means? It does not mean the slave at home or the homebody or somebody who never gets out of the door. It means, auros means a guard. Literally, one who is aware. Okay, so a wife is to be a guard and one who is aware in her oikos, in her family. So what we have when we're talking about asking your husband at home, you're talking about a wife who is the guardian of her family in her sphere. There's no one that's more protective and authoritative in watching over and being aware of what's going on in her family than the wife, than the mama, okay, in that whole thing. So when a wife says, you interrogate your husband at home, Paul is saying, you question him, you investigate him in the setting that you are the most secure and authoritative and protective. Your home, your family. So guess what? Keeper at home goes from being the drudge that just scrubs floors all day long to the guardian of the family. And that's what wives are to be in their homes. And so when questioning, interrogating, investigating needs to happen, Paul says, do it in a setting where you're most secure and where you have the most authority, and that's at home. And then we have this itty-bitty word, for, and for simply means because, or for the following reason. For, at last, it says, if they would learn anything, let them ask their husbands at home, because. So finally, at last, Paul is going to provide the reason for what seems to be an unreasonable prohibition against wives. It seems an unreasonable thing. I mean, I've read that for years and went, I don't know what it means, but it's in there. And it seemed unreasonable. But Paul tells us why he gives this unusual command, this unusual limitation on wives. All right, so why? Because it is a shame. That's the reason that Paul gives for being silent, having a place and a time to question and confront, and that place being the home, because it is a shame. Now, if that gives you whiplash, it should. Because now you're saying, because, and it should have said something about the second coming of Christ, or it should have said something about women are the perfect example of the crucified Christian life, or something like that. No, he says the reason for this prohibition is because it is a shame. What's a shame? Stay tuned, we'll find out. But let's get the word shame dealt with first of all. Now, when we think of the word shame, we almost always think that if it's a shame, it is horribly sinful. It is a vile sin. That's what we think of when we see it is a shame. But hold the phone just a second here. Let's take a look at what Paul really meant when he used what has been translated into English as shame. The word is askaron. Even sounds horribly sinful, doesn't it? But it's not. You guys. Askaron. Here's another big word that I'll have to define for you, even though it's an English word. Indecorum. Okay? Not for public view. That's what indecorum is. Something that's not for public view. Now look at the root word of indecorum is the word decor. Everybody knows what decor is. Okay? Decor is something displayed for the public to view. Decorate. It's something that is for public view. If something is indecorum, it's something that is not to be viewed publicly. Right? It is the opposite of a decoration. Okay? Now, servicemen and women, they get decorated for bravery and for doing good things. And what does that mean? They get something on the front of them that the public can view. That's what being decorated means. So indecorum, shame means it's not for public view. The other word that's used is impropriety. This is another word that needs some definition. Things that are not to be shown in public, however, they are shown in public anyway. If something that is not to be shown in public gets shown in public anyway, that is called an impropriety. Okay? It is not sin. I mean, it could be sin, but it has nothing to do with being sinful at its core. It's simply something that's not for public to see. Okay? The example that comes to me right off that I'll just simply mention briefly is that an indecorum would be to go to the bathroom in public. Okay, that's not sinful to go to the bathroom. Okay? But it is something that should not be displayed for public view. Okay? Inappropriety is the same thing. Things that are not to be shown in public, when they are shown in public, that's called impropriety. When somebody does go to the bathroom in your living room, that is impropriety. Okay? Now, there could be sin involved. There could be selfish, there could be anger, there could be all kinds of revenge, there could be spite, there could be all kinds of things in there. But really what's going on there is that there's something that should not be seen in public. It's something that we all do, or we all should do, but it's not for public view. Inappropriate is the next one, and that which is in poor taste in the view of other people. That's the big thing throughout all of these things about shame, is that it's a shame when it's viewed by other people. It's a shame when it's viewed by other people. Shame is not something sinful. Shame is something that is necessary, but should not be done in the view of other people. That's what he means by shame. Guess what we're talking about? We're talking about wives judging their husbands' prophecies in the view of other people, in the hearing of other people. It's an indecorum. It's an impropriety for her to do that. Now, it's not sinful for her to judge her husband's prophecy. There's a time and place, just like there's a time and a place to go to the bathroom. There's a time and a place for this particular activity, necessary activity, to take place, but it's not to be done where it can be viewed by the public. That's what's shameful. Okay, so it's shameful when it's done out of place and out of time. It's not the right place and it's not the right time. Covering her husband by remaining silent. Okay, James 5:20. I skipped the line there. James 5:20. 1 Peter 4:8 says love covers, and the word there for covered is hides or keeps secret. Guess what one of the definitions of keep silent is? Keep secret. It's not sinful. It's just, it should be kept secret. It should be hidden. It should be covered. And love covers the multitude of sins. And it covers the multitude of improprieties and indecorums as well. Okay. Way. So what he's talking about is not that they should remain silent because saying something is sinful. No, no, no. He's not talking about saying something in the meeting is sinful. Many, many other places that women are free to speak in all kinds of meetings, in all kinds of ways, and there's no sin in it. There's no sin in it. But there is something that is not to be viewed in public, and that's when she speaks out loud in judgment of her husband's prophecy. That is a shame. It's embarrassing to her. It's embarrassing to him. And it's embarrassing to the rest of the church. In other words, it does not fulfill the overriding principle of this section, let all things be done unto edifying. There is no edification in it. So let her ask her husband at home, because it is an impropriety for her to do it in public, where other people can view that. They should not be viewing husbands and wives debating his prophecies or her prophecies. They should not see that happening. There are others that have been assigned that task. Spouses don't need to do that. That's not their job, unless they're at home. Pretty good stuff. Here's 3 possible reasons why verbally, you know what? I just looked at the clock, and the clock says my time is up. We'll take up right here at this spot next time. Thank you for listening.